Welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist congregation of Terre, Haute. This congregation welcomes all people, regardless of their age, religion, race, nationality, ability, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, or anything else that has been used to divide people. We are a group of people with our own opinions, our own ideas, our own dreams, but we share ideals. We share a common belief in a liberal religion. In our discussions, we may disagree with each other, but we must always remember that what unites us is stronger than what separates us. We must always end the service aware of the love that we have for each other.
Our seventh principle, respect for the interdependent web of all existence, is a glorious statement. Yet we make a profound mistake when we limit it to merely an environmental idea. It is so much more. It is our response to the great dangers of both individualism and oppression. It is our solution to the seeming conflict between the individual and the group. Our seventh principle may be our Unitarian Universalist way of coming to fully embrace something greater than ourselves. The interdependent web, expressed as a spirit of life, the ground of all being, the oneness of all existence, the community-forming power, the process of life, the creative force, even God, can help us develop that social understanding of ourselves that we and our culture so desperately need. It is a source of meaning to which we can devote our lives. Reverend Forrest Gilmore from over in Bloomington. Our opening words are number 434, may we be reminded of our highest aspiration. 434, may we be reminded here of our highest aspirations and inspired to bring our gifts of love and service to the altar of humanity. May we know once again that we are not isolated beings, but connected in mystery and miracle to the universe, to this community, and to each other. Our transitional words are responsive, and they're from SLT 468, We Need One Another. We need one another when we mourn and would be comforted.
We need one another when we are in trouble and afraid.
We need one another when we are in despair, in temptation, and need to be recalled to our best selves again.
We need one another when we would accomplish some great purpose and cannot do it alone.
We need one another in the hour of success when we look for someone to share our triumphs.
We need one another in the hour of defeat, when with encouragement we might endure and stand again.
We need one another when we come to die and would have gentle hands prepare us for the journey.
All our lives we are in need, and others are in need of us. This was by George Odell.
Our program is our own Julie Young, and she will present a program entitled Rethink Thanksgiving.
Good morning. It's very nice to be back. Frank and I had a little vacation, and although it's nice to go on vacation, it's also nice to come back and see our friends. In the program, it says that I am and have been responsible for some time arranging speakers. I also want to give credit to all the people in the congregation who make suggestions of people that would be a good program for us. Continue to do that. I am very grateful. Rethinking Thanksgiving. This is a UUA program that Frank and I participated in a year ago with our friends in Hawaii, the UU group there. We did it via Zoom. It made a strong impression on me, and I wanted to share it with you. There are many different experiences we have had over Thanksgiving. Some of us had lots of food. Some of us struggled to have enough. Some were surrounded by people. Some were alone or with just one other person. For many, it's an important time of coming together with family. This day gives us a chance to look at and change stories we have about our families and ourselves. Thanksgiving is based on myths that hide and erase the genocide that the United States is founded upon. What would it mean to tell a different story, an honest story? This past year has been filled with an emboldening of white supremacy. At the same time, more and more people are working to create something different. We cannot expect that justice will ever come if we are not willing to face the injustices of our past and present. Holidays can be a time to connect and talk about these realities and touch people's hearts in profound ways. This can be fertile ground for lasting change. The Indigenous Solidarity Network has developed this program geared for white folks to discuss settler privilege and Thanksgiving with each other. We are grateful for the chapter, Thanksgiving Proves the Indians Welcomed the Pilgrims, from their book, All the Real Indians Died Off, and 20 other myths about Native Americans. We need to talk about the history and ongoing reality of settler colonialism, parenthesis, meaning how European people violently took lands and peoples for their own gains and came to stay. In the United States, this process of settling included enslaving people of African descent to build a country on indigenous land. It's important to look at the ways that the colonization of indigenous nations went hand in hand with enslaving African people to work that land, and how the violence is ongoing, as is indigenous and people of color-led resistance. It can be hard for any of us to confront it, but this is how change starts and gives us the chance for real healing. Holidays are intense for many of us, whether they are filled with joy or sorrow and struggle or a combination. Taking time to pause and notice how we are doing and what is happening can support us to continue to be in hard conversations. As with any work in which we are acting in solidarity against oppression, we recognize we do this work not for Indigenous peoples, but in partnership. We act out of mutual interest, recognizing we are all facing the crisis of climate catastrophe and environmental destruction. It is Indigenous peoples who are fighting back most intensely and defending their lands. Supporting Indigenous protection of lands and waters ensures they will be protected for future generations. The roots of Thanksgiving are complicated and painful. Native and non-native scholars tend to agree that although there was a feast in 1621, this did not begin a tradition of Thanksgiving. The first recorded Thanksgiving was a celebration of murder. Dutch and English mercenaries massacred over 700 indigenous people during their green corn dance in 1637. I had never heard that before, and it really shook me. The next day, the governor of Massachusetts Bay Colony declared Thanksgiving Day to commemorate subduing the Indians. The Massachusetts Department of Commerce asked the Wampanoag Indians to select a speaker to mark the 350th anniversary of the Pilgrims' arrival and the first Thanksgiving. 350 years after the Pilgrims began their invasion of the land of the Indians, their American descendants planned an anniversary celebration. Still clinging to the white schoolbook myth of friendly relations between their forefathers and the Indians, the anniversary planners thought it would be nice to have an Indian make an appreciative and complimentary speech at their dinner. And the man they asked to do it was named Frank James. Frank James was a school teacher. He had a bumper sticker on his car that said, "Custer had it coming." Okay. The planners, however, wanted to see his speech in advance. And it turned out that his views, based on history rather than myth, were not what the Pilgrims' descendants wanted. Frank James refused to deliver a speech written by a PR firm. Frank James was not allowed to give his speech. Here it is. I speak to you as a man, and I've worked to pronounce this, and I'm still struggling. Wampanoag man. I am a proud man, proud of my ancestry, my accomplishments, won by strict parental direction. Quote, "You must succeed. Your face is a different color in this small Cape Cod community." Close quote. I'm a product of poverty and discrimination. I and my brothers and sisters have painfully overcome, and to some extent we have earned the respect of our community. We are Indians first, but we are termed good citizens. Sometimes we are arrogant, but only because society has pressured us to be. It is with mixed emotion I stand before you today. This is a time of celebration for you, celebrating an anniversary of a beginning for the white man, a time of looking back, reflection. It is with a heavy heart that I look back upon what happened to my people. Even before the Pilgrims landed, it was common practice for explorers to capture Indians, take them to Europe, and sell them as slaves for 200 shillings apiece. The Pilgrims had hardly explored the shores of Cape Cod for 4 days before they robbed the graves of my ancestors and stolen their corn and beans. There was a search party of 16 men. They took as much of the Indians' winter provisions as they could carry. Massasoit, the great Sachem, knew these facts, yet he and his people welcomed and befriended the settlers. Perhaps he did this because his tribe had been depleted by the epidemic, or his knowledge of the harsh oncoming winter was the reason for his peaceful acceptance. This action by Massasoit was perhaps our biggest mistake. We welcomed you, the white man, with open arms, little knowing it was the beginning of the end, that before 50 years were to pass, the Wampanoag would no longer be a free people. What has happened in those 50 short years? What has happened in the last 300 years? History gives us facts. There were atrocities. There were broken promises. And most of these centered around land ownership. Among ourselves, we understood there were boundaries, but never before had we had to deal with fences and stone walls. But the white man had a need to prove his worth by the amount of land that he owned. Only 10 years later, when the Puritans came, they treated the Wampanoag with even less kindness in converting the souls of the so-called savages. Although the Puritans were harsh to members of their own society, the Indian was pressed between stone slabs and hanged as a witch. I never read that before either. So down through the years, there's a record after record of Indian lands taken and in token reservations set up for him in which to live. The Indian, having been stripped of his power, could only stand by and watch, while the white man took his land and used it for personal gain. This the Indian could not understand, for to him, land was survival, to farm, to hunt, to be enjoyed. It was not to be abused. We see incident after incident where the white man sought to tame the savage and convert him to the Christian way of life. The early Pilgrim settlers led the Indian to believe that if he did not behave, they would dig up the ground and unleash the great epidemic again. The white man used the Indian's nautical skills and abilities. They let him be only a seaman, never captain. Time and again in the white man's society, we Indians have been termed low man on the totem pole. Has the Wampanoag really disappeared? There's still an aura of mystery. We know there was an epidemic that took many lives. Some moved west and joined the Cherokee and Cheyenne. They were forced to move. Some even went north to Canada. Many put aside their Indian heritage and accepted the white man's way for their own survival. There are some who do not wish it known that they are Indian for social or economic reasons. What happened to those Indians who chose to remain and live among the early settlers? What kind of existence did they have as a civilized people? Living was not as complex as life today, but they dealt with the confusion and the change. Honesty, trust, concern, pride, politics wove themselves in and out of their daily living. Hence, the Indian was termed crafty, cunning, rapacious, dirty. History wants us to believe that the Indian was a savage, illiterate, uncivilized. A history that was written by an organized, disciplined people to expose us as an unorganized, undisciplined entity. Two distinctly different cultures met. One thought they must control life. The other believed life was to be enjoyed because nature decreed it. Let us remember the Indian is and was just as human as the white man. The Indian feels pain, gets hurt, and becomes defensive, has dreams, bears tragedy and failure, suffers from loneliness, needs to cry as well as laugh. He too is often misunderstood. Although time has drained our culture and our language is almost extinct, we, the Wampanoags, still walk the land of Massachusetts. We may be fragmented, we may be confused. Many years have passed since we have been a people together. Our lands were invaded. We fought as hard to keep our land as you, the whites, did to take our land from us. We were conquered. We became the American prisoners of war in many cases and wards of the US government until only recently. Our spirit refuses to die. Yesterday, we walked the woodland paths and sandy trails. Today, we must walk the macadam highways. We are uniting. We are standing, not in our wigwams, but in your concrete tent. We stand tall and proud, and before too many moons pass, we'll right the wrongs we have allowed to happen. We forfeited our country. Our lands have fallen into the hands of the aggressor. We have allowed the white man to keep us on our knees. What has happened cannot be changed. But today we must work towards a more humane America, a more Indian America, where men and nature once again are important, where the Indian values of honor, truth, and brotherhood prevail. You, the white man, are celebrating an anniversary. We, the Wampanoags, will help you celebrate the concept of a new beginning. It was the beginning of a new life for the Pilgrims. Now, 350 years later, it is a beginning of a new determination for the original American, the American Indian. There are some factors concerning the Wampanoags and other Indians across the vast nation. We now have 350 years of experience living amongst the white man. We can now speak his language. We can now think as a white man thinks. We can now compete with him for top jobs. We're being heard. We are now being listened to. The important point is that along with these necessities of everyday living, we still have the spirit, we still have the unique culture, we still have the will, and most important of all, the determination to remain as Indians. We are determined, and our presence here this evening is living testimony that this is only the beginning of the American Indian, particularly the Wampanoag, to regain the position in this country that is rightfully ours. And he wrote that in 1970. Today, or not today, on Thanksgiving Day, the Washington Post had a feature article about him, and I think portions of this speech are included in that article. Friends, as I said, I found this very, very disturbing. I don't know what they're teaching in our schools today, but they're probably reenacting the first Thanksgiving, which is a total, what is the word I want? Total myth. So thank you for listening, and let's do better. Thank you.
Our closing hymn is number 189, Light of Ages and of Nations.
Light of ages and of nations, every race and every time has received thine inspirations, glimpses of thy truth sublime. Always spirits in rapt vision past the heavenly veil within, always hearts bowed in contrition, found salvation from their sin. Reason's noble aspiration, truth in growing clearness saw. Conscience spoke its condemnation, or proclaimed eternal law. While thine inward revelations told thy saints their prayers were heard, prophets to the guilty nations spoke thine everlasting word. Lo, that word abideth ever, revelation is not sealed, answering now to our endeavor, truth and right are still revealed. That which came to ancient sages, Greek, barbarian, Roman, Jew, written in the soul's deep pages, shines today forever new.
Our closing words, 679, Be ye lamps unto yourselves. Be ye lamps unto yourselves, be your own confidence. Hold to the truth within yourselves as to the only lamp.
May the blessed